There it is, the Jeep Wave. You gotta love it. What is going on, guys? Today I wanted to do another video just talking about how reliable is the Jeep Wrangler. If you're watching this video, you're probably curious, how reliable is the Jeep Wrangler Unlimited? So I'm specifically talking about the 2007 through the current year. So this is the JK model I'm talking about. I can't really speak to the older models like the YJ and the TJ because I don't have experience with those models of Jeep Wranglers, so I can't really speak about that, but I do want to talk about from the 2007 through the present year. So in order for me to really, talk to you guys about this, I have to do a little bit of a story time. Now, if you guys don't know, this is my second Jeep Wrangler that I've owned. I've owned one before. I know I've said this before on my channel, but I don't know if any of you guys who are watching this video, if you've seen the other videos before of me talking about my other Jeep Wrangler. It was a 2007 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited X model. It had the hardtop. It was just a two-wheel drive, so it wasn't like the four-wheel drive or anything like that. It was just a two-wheel drive, but it was modified. The modifications that were done to it, it had I believe it was a super lift, like 3-inch lift kit. It wasn't exactly a leveling kit. It was like it was essentially like a budget boost type of lift on it. It had different wheels. They weren't exactly the biggest wheels. I don't exactly remember the size wheels, but the wheels weren't huge. It had the like steel roll cage thing on it, like the mount, so you can like mount stuff on your Jeep. It had that on it as well. You could tell that there were lights put on the Jeep at one point in time, but the owner, when they traded it in, they must have took everything off. But so there was some stuff that was done to that Jeep. And essentially when I first went to go look at that Jeep, I was looking at that and looking at a Dodge Ram, looking at a couple other vehicles, but when I saw that Jeep Wrangler, that just completely blew me away, and that's what I went for. So, and that was now, I think like 2 years ago now, that's when I first bought that Jeep Wrangler. I will say I bought that one with over 100,000 miles on it, and it was a 2007. So I bought that like 2 years ago, so like 2015. But, for what it was priced nice, and, it seemed like it was a pretty decent shape. It was a straight, Jeep Wrangler. So it wasn't super expensive for, what Jeep Wranglers go for, especially because that one had some aftermarket parts already on it. That's pretty much what I wanted. I wanted something that had some stuff done to it, at the time, so I didn't have to put a whole bunch of money into trying to make it to look the way I wanted it to look. It looked pretty cool. But anyways, long story short, I bought that Jeep Wrangler because the way it looked, and it was priced nice. The first time that I had any problems with that Jeep was when me and my now fiance, we went on a small road trip. It was about like an hour and a half away. We went to go see a concert. We drove down, we went to the concert, everything was fine, and then we drove back. And on our way back, thank God, like as soon as we crossed the border and we were like, semi close to home, the Jeep just threw a code and it just went into limp mode. And granted, this was probably like 2 days after I bought the Jeep. Like this is 2 days after I bought it. And it just went into limp mode. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning and we just got off the interstate. Thank God we just got, back semi towards home. So I had to limp the Jeep back and get off the interstate, and we had to go to like a gas station. Luckily, I was able to, since it was nighttime, I was able to like limp the Jeep pretty much downhill, like a couple miles towards my parents' house, because my parents' house was pretty close. So I was able to at least get my Jeep to my parents' house. I left it there. I took my other sister's car and we drove home. So after this, this was 2 days after I bought the Jeep. That was a major, like red flag for me. I was like, okay, something's terribly wrong. I bring the Jeep in to get it serviced. They check it over. They said they can't find anything wrong with it. It's fine. They'll clear the codes, whatever. At this point in time, I'm upset because I'm like, no, something's definitely wrong, because it went into limp mode. So there's something definitely wrong here. But the dealership, they didn't really want to dig into it and really try to fix anything at this point. Long story short, this kept happening a couple different times. Now, what was the cause of this? You know, the dealership, they believe it was the wiring harness. You know, I cannot attest to that. They believe it was the wiring harness. Something went wrong with that. They believe that the wiring harness went wrong, and then that kept causing electrical problems with the Jeep. So the Jeep kept going into limp mode, you know, numerous times. Like this happened, you know, in a span of maybe like a week and a half. This probably happened 5 or 6 different times, and it just became extremely frustrating, is the fact that I, you know, spent money on this vehicle, and I was already planning on doing, you know, upgrades and all this other stuff. And that was when I first started, you know, really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with YouTube, you know, and that was just really frustrating, just that every single time I was trying to do something with the Jeep, it would just go in limp mode. I couldn't even drive. With that being said, you know, when I bought that Jeep, it's actually still one of my most popular videos on this channel. You know, I think it was titled Buying a Jeep Wrangler. Still one of my most popular videos on my channel to this day. But, so essentially, that Jeep had so many problems that the dealership, they did a buyback for me, because it just had so many problems. You know, they bought it back, they figured they'll flip it again, you know, they'll just sell it. So for them, it wasn't that big of a deal, but for me, you know, it was a big deal, because, hey, I spent money on this vehicle and something's wrong. Now, what's the point of me saying all of that? The point of me saying all of that is that that was my experience with my first Jeep Wrangler. You know, I had so many problems with it, and it just became a nuisance. You know, I was looking up, you know, different things, you know, trying to figure out what was going on. And, you know, there was also another problem, though, with that Jeep as well. It was something with the evac system. You know, some people said that could be remedied with just, you know, a different gas cap. So I bought a different gas cap, put that on, and I was still having some problems with that. You know, there were just a host of different problems with that Jeep. But also, I kind of attribute that towards some of those upgrades that were done to the Jeep weren't the best, you know, so take that with a grain of salt. I don't know exactly what the previous owner did to it, but yeah, so there was definitely some stuff that was being done to it. There it is, the Jeep Wave. You gotta love it. Anyway, so long story short, that was my first experience with my first Jeep Wrangler. But needless to say, this is a 2010 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited Sport. Even with all the problems that the first one had, I will say, you know, that was just my experience with that Jeep Wrangler. And actually, the funny thing is, though, that same Jeep Wrangler, they did resell it, and I've actually seen the owner of it driving it. So they essentially got that Jeep figured out, and they resold it, and I seen the owner driving it a couple times, and that was actually partially the reason why I wanted to buy another Jeep Wrangler, because when I saw the guy driving, you know, it really made me miss, you know, the Jeep Wrangler. Because if I haven't said this before, the Jeep Wrangler is essentially my dream car, and I'm so happy that I'm back in one now. But with that being said, the whole point of me saying that is just that the fact that that was just my experience with that one Jeep Wrangler. You know, that one, I bought it with a little bit more miles, had some aftermarket stuff done to it, and it's probably lived a more, you know, rougher life, just because it looked like, you know, the person, you know, who bought it, they did do things to it, you know, and they, you know, maybe not took it off-road that much because it was a two-wheel drive version. That Jeep at least looked like it has been used, you know, but that was just that one experience. This experience in this Jeep Wrangler, this is a 2010 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, two-wheel drive version as well. This is the sport version. I've had zero problems with this thing, not on the dashboard, but I have zero problems with this thing. I've had this Jeep now for a couple months. I've had zero problems, zero issues, nothing at all. This thing has been driving perfectly fine. I will say that version and this version still had the 3.8 liter V6 engine. You know, so if you do some research on these engines, you know, you will see them, you know, still driving around with, you know, well over 100,000 miles. I've seen some, you know, I've seen actually some Jeeps up for sale with 200,000 miles on them. You know, obviously when you start getting up in that range, you will be a lot more weary, but you know, but I can speak to the reliability of this Jeep has been great. like I said, I had zero problems with this Jeep. You know, only thing I really have to have done is just, you know, get the oil change and just simple, you know, the basic stuff. But zero problems with this thing at all. In fact, I will say this Jeep drives so much better than that previous Jeep. You know, obviously that one had aftermarket stuff done to it, so, you know, changed the driving dynamics and everything about that. But this Jeep so far has been just great. And I really just want to say that when it comes down to reliability, it really is kind of a numbers game, because yes, while some cars are more reliable than others, you will always find a bad, you know, vehicle in the bunch. You're always going to find, you know, like a lemon. You're always going to find something like that. But, you know, every single vehicle is different. But yeah, hopefully this video was somewhat useful and somewhat entertaining to you guys. So thank you so much for watching it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this video, give it a like. Check out some of the other videos that I've done. I've done a lot of videos on this Jeep Wrangler, and I plan on doing a whole bunch more. So if you like these type of videos, check out my channel. Thanks guys. See ya.